You are watching Co-op for Two. I'm Jesse. I'm here with Greg.
Thanks for having me on our channel.
This is our quick, super quick, before you buy it for Decorum. But before we start, let's go down to the table and see how this game plays.
Decorum is a cooperative hidden information game where you and your housemates share the same objective: decorate your home in a way that makes you all happy. Decorum is designed by Charlie Mackin, Harry Mackin, and Drew Tenenbaum. It came out in 2022, is a medium weight game in the deduction genre. It plays 2 to 4 players and roughly 30 minutes per scenario. Decorum plays differently depending on player count. For a 2-player game, there are 20 scenarios. At scenarios 12 and 15, secret envelopes are opened, which will change the game in a surprising way. Players choose a scenario envelope, which contains a setup card and secret goals for each player. The setup card describes the initial placement of objects and room colors in the house. There are 3 different types of objects, in 4 different styles and 4 different colors. Player turns are simple. On your turn, you can make a single change to the house. You may add an object to an empty slot, remove an object, or swap an object for one of the same type. You can also change the room color. If all of your hidden goals are met, you may pass. After you take an action, other players may make a simple comment about whether they liked your change or not. On certain rounds, players have a heart-to-heart, where they each choose one of their secret goals to share with the other player. The players win if all goals are met before time runs out. If players wish, there is a scoring system to rank their victory. The 3 or 4 player game uses a different deck of scenario cards, has no surprise envelopes that change the game rules, and uses a different mechanism for sharing information. Okay, firstly, we always like to talk about the art and components. They're serviceable. Everything looks fine. It's functional. It's not really the type of the game where you need like some crazy big components. There is a little bit of a story, but it's completely superfluous. You don't need it at all. The only thing I would say is that I wish, oftentimes it's a little confusing, the symbols they use for modern, antique, retro, and unusual. So the colors are obviously very easy to tell, and the shapes are pretty easy. I almost wish they used the same art like for each of the lamps or whatever, because it does take a little bandwidth that you maybe wouldn't need to use.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, let me just explain my experience with this game. I played this at Gen Con with 4 players and loved it. Loved the experience. It was my top pick from Gen Con from last year, and I picked it up at Gen Con. And it's got all the things I love. It's sort of a really unique experience, and we played it. We were all sort of like giddy about how this experience we had never had before. You've got this limited conversation. You're messing with people. You're like laughing that you're messing up their game. So I was so excited about it. Came back, wrote a little post on Twitter about how much I liked it. And we played the first game, and it was fun. The second game was fun. That's right. And then something interesting happened after that second game. So I love campaigns and ramping up and ramped up difficulties, and that should be right in my wheelhouse. But something very weird happened. The games started getting more complex in terms of the conditions, and one of the most fun things about this game is you're trying to guess what the other player's constraints are as you've got your constraints. At about game 4 or 5, our constraints, our rules were so complicated that basically everything went out the window, but except for trying to make sure we weren't breaking the rules and keep our rules. And all of the fun started getting sucked out of this game. And by the time we got to our last playthrough, I was like, I hate this game. I really did not enjoy the experience because most of my time was just spent trying to make sure I got the rules right. So like, this game has quickly become a one-trick pony that I do not enjoy playing at all.
So I'm going to disagree with Jesse a little bit here. I think it's a very clever design. I like the idea that the cards are written specifically so that they've planned all of these out, right? They're made so you can't end up in any situations that are impossible or whatever. So they're all really thought out, which I thought was a pretty cool thing. I do think it's a very clever design. And as Jesse mentioned, some of the best parts of it are trying to guess how your goals are maybe mirrored in your opponent and your teammates, and that you're trying to guess their goals. And that's one of the best parts. One other favorite part is deciding which of your goals you're going to give to the other player, hoping they can, whichever one's going to be the most constructive that you're having trouble with, or your most complicated one, or the one where you feel like maybe if they know that, they might be able to figure out another of your goals or whatever. And those heart-to-hearts are really, really cool to me. I really love a filler game. I love the idea of playing something quick. Most of our games, I feel like the box is 30 minutes, but honestly, like, I feel like 15 minutes is all it took for us to play most of our games. I do agree that the earlier games were much more enjoyable because it was easier to guess your opponent's, what they were trying to do, their goals. Your goals do get more complicated, and you do spend a lot of time just agonizing about what to do about that. And I found that most of the early moves that you made, you really didn't care about that much because you knew you were just randomly changing things and they were randomly changing things. And it was very difficult to figure out what your teammates' goals were and even really what your goals were. But often, ironically, most of the games would end either once you'd revealed one goal or you hadn't revealed the goal. You ended up working out whatever it was, and the game ended before really the most enjoyable parts for me. I think that we played 14 of the 20. And we did open the envelopes a little early so that we could check those out. They don't really change the game in a way that was really that compelling or really that necessary to have in the game, really, honestly. So we did have 2 instances as well where our goals were so convoluted or difficult that we each of us at some point had made a mistake. So when we finished the game, we're like, oh, we actually did not actually win. Although in those games we finished with enough time where we would have won. And I think that says something about the game where, 14 plays, 14 victories, that does say a little something about maybe the ease of the game. Although I think this game is supposed to kind of fit in the wheelhouse of you don't play all 20 in a row. You maybe use it as a good cool down game. You play something heavy and then you play maybe a game or 2 of it. And I think that's where the biggest value where the game ends.
I agree with Greg that the most interesting decision is what to share of your goals. It's interesting to note that the 3 and 4 player game, not only do you decide what rule to share, but who to share it with. And you actually give them a card with your rule on it, which would have been nice in the 2 player game to have cards to share. And you mentioned that we won every game. I think this is an experience game, so just the process should be enough fun. However, I've said already that I do not enjoy the process when you get up to the larger game counts in the campaign. The one bit of fun that I started to have when we got towards the end, you mentioned how we got some rules wrong. We were playing a metagame, and the metagame was hoping that when we got to the end that the other player had read one of their rules wrong and messed it up. So that was the fun we were having by the time we got to the end. For me, disappointing, One Trick Pony, I would give this maybe a 7 for your first play just for the unique experience, but quickly drops down to a 6 or 5 if you're going to play it a bunch.
Yeah, you did seem to get pretty angry, frustrated or angry.
Just when I read my rules at every game, I was just angry.
So it's hit differently for me. I think for the price, the weight, the cleverness in the game, and just using it as a filler game, I think it's pretty delightful little package for me. I would give it like a 7.5. I think, if you just treat it as that filler game, it could be a really good game for you.
So there you have it. Hopefully that helps you decide if this game is for you. I think both Greg and I would like to see further developments, further games from this group, even if we disagreed on this one. And we'll see you in the next video. All right, but we got to do the whole rules thing.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Yeah. So,
but we're getting good at it. We're getting back into the groove.
We don't do the cold open.
So that's right. We don't do. Okay. Okay. Did I misunderstand your rule about this? A green can only go here or nowhere, and no green can go anywhere else. But it doesn't say anything about this, does it?
The middle slot in each room must be empty or green.
Oh, empty or green.
And green can't be anywhere else.
Let's see. Okay, I misunderstood it. Empty or green, right? Sorry. I didn't misunderstand it. I just forgot it, because how am I supposed to remember everything?